Welcome to this week's retrospective. And I'm not going to lie, this week has been a monster week and I am a bit exhausted, but I'm very happy with what we've been able to do. And I'm just going to run through that very, very quickly because we did a lot. So, one of the things that, for those of you and yes, is my human in the loop experiment is about personal productivity, and a lot of that I've been through in the first series of retrospectives, and we're now doubling down on this idea of can one person create a publishing business, and there's lots of reasons for focusing on that, not least because it's my experience. So that's a little bit of context for those of you who are new. But what we built this week, we built a Google Docs to Webflow production line, because Google Docs is brilliant as a place where you can collaborate with others, get input, and create well-crafted article. And what I wanted to do was retain that, so work in Google Docs, but push it into Webflow. And I was looking for a solution, and I found something. It was like £290 a year, and we built the same thing by using ChatGPT and Claude. And what it does is it takes a Google Doc with images and videos, everything, puts it into Webflow CMS rich text fields with automatic image conversion to AVIF, which is small optimized images, small as in file size, not small as in small, tiny. YouTube video embeds that actually work, figure captions on the images. So you can say, oh, this is an image of me, code blocks and quotes, all properly formatted. And here's the thing about building this. I mean, even though I am tech savvy, but building something like this from scratch, from initial concept to production ready, would have been weeks and weeks of work, perhaps even months. By using Claude and ChatGPT as programming partners, 0 to production ready in a fraction of the time. And wait for it, this is how long it took me. 3 days. It took me 3 days. It was solid 3 days, but 3 days. That is amazing. And that is an opportunity because the economics of that are brutal. The Cloud Press solution, solar plan, £280 a year, 50 exports a month. We'd be over that in 2 months at the rate we're going. One CMS connection, one user. I've got custom built, unlimited exports, full control. It's not a bit cheaper. It's massive recurring cost savings, and we can tune it to our workflow. For example, we can define little shortcodes that we put into a Google Doc, which is recognized by the microservice. And before it pushes it into Webflow, it reformats it into the proper HTML. So your time doing those final tweaks on Webflow or whatever CMS you use, because this is applicable to any CMS that'll allow you to put HTML into rich text fields. Time is precious. Time is the one thing you don't want to be wasting on those little tenor things. A few things broke because initially we were looking at this and we were like, hey, here's a really elegant YouTube system where we can just take the thumbnail so it loads faster, but that didn't quite work. So now we're putting it in as an iframe, but you know what? Sometimes it just needs to work, right? You can spend too much time on getting to try it in little detail. The second thing we learned is AI-generated content can pass authenticity tests 100%. So it's a way of thinking about the workflow. We published AI 2 years in, the reality no one's talking about. And I'll come on to how we did it, but we ran it through Grammarly's AI detection. Zero AI patterns. 1% external source matches expected because we were referencing it. It was a proof of concept of the entire human in the loop methodology. And here's the process that actually works. So don't go to AI and say, hey, tell me what you think has happened in 2 years of AI. You will get nonsense and you'll get drivel. So the way it actually works is I've spent some time making some voice notes of my observations of what has happened in the AI space, match that in with my industry experience, connected some dots, and that was then a coherent long form of notes. And that is what was then pushed into the AI engine that I built. So the input has connections and thought and experience that is entirely human. And then the other things, which you kind of call like the essentials you need to do when you're publishing, like the deep research on getting the facts and the stats and everything, those are AI jobs, and it did them really well. But the end product is, for all about it, is 100% AI generated, but it's 100% human in essence. And it was very cool to see that work and put that in. And also equally cool to see that you can train your own engines into a tone of voice so that not a delve insight, not a pivot insight, not a transformative insight. You know what I'm talking about. The other thing where, again, it's a validation of all the learning we've done is the original title was AI 2 years in, the reality no one's talking about. And because, and I mentioned this in some of my past retrospectives, I've been collecting YouTube titles that really resonate. We were able to put that into our AI and say, look, this is the title we're thinking about. What are the patterns that would be similar to this that you're seeing that really resonate? So what we found, what came back very quickly, was guidance where you went, nobody's talking about that pattern, is very saturated. And the high performing ones now are using specific numbers, state of patterns, and the current. So what I got back by the AI actively querying that real time data is the title of We've Been Asking the Wrong Question About AI. And that is actually working in terms of the results that are getting in. I'm going to link to it. And for me, the big realization around this is, that was based on a video which had a lot of views. And rather than going, hey, turn this video into an article, the question was, write a good supporting article and don't get distracted with stuffing it full of SEO garbage and see what happens, because SEO is dead. There is no point. Any of those practices, everything that I'm seeing of, putting in all the right keywords and everything with the AI results pages, you're wasting your time. And that is my view. So as you can tell, a heck of a lot of work was done this week. So what broke? The Webflow's rich text editor has some limitations that we learned. So we had to go around the loop a little bit in terms of that process when it generated the HTML that needed to be, Webflow ready. That took a bit of iterations, and to be honest, that was actually the hardest part of the entire process. And what are we going to change? Well, you're already seeing some of it in this retrospective. Is going to be much more about starting to build digitizing events as a platform where we share content that is helpful for small businesses to try and use what I've been through, what we've been through, and implement it into their own, like, for example, if you can build a microservice, this is another thing we did, which will take an image and resize it to any format you want without you having to put it into Canva, crop it, push it across, and you get charged, there's lots of zeros here, 0.001 pence per image, compared to these APIs that charge you 15 quid up front. Why wouldn't you do it? And you don't even have to do it. You don't even have to go to Fiverr and hire a programmer. Just put that question into Claude and it'll give you the code, and it works. And that example of this image resizing service, now that I've taught both Claude and OpenAI about the nuances of Google Cloud, I typed in my objective of that service and I'm up and running in 20 minutes. That is insane. In the old world, that would be someone running off, finding a dev, all of that nonsense. That is where the real opportunity of this stuff is. You can do things faster. There was another thing that we put in as part of this automation, now that we had that image generation done, create a workflow that creates thumbnails for this retrospective. So by the time you watch it, you will see my head in the thumbnail. And that used to take a lot of back and forthing, even with AI. With the advances that are happening in these generative image models, again, it is scary. But the value in it is that you can, those little tiny pieces of work, the critical non-essentials, you do need a good thumbnail. It's not going to make a huge difference to the performance of your individual article. But in aggregate, across your channel, when you're looking at 1,000 views a month, it will give you 100 more. But you're not having to do any of the work. You make that job an AI job. So forward look, I have not shared any of this on my LinkedIn network. I've got over 4,000, coming close to 5,000 connections that I've built up over the years. My intent has been to really understand things that would provide value. So that is going to start going live, and we're time shifting it. So we're going to be sharing, I'm going to be sharing week 1 on LinkedIn when I'm already at what week this is, but it's definitely past 14. And going to try and use the story arc system that we built to see if we can coherently, using data, put together that LinkedIn story in such a way that we can, not entirely programmatically, but we can certainly build it now that we've got all that content ready to go, using AI to make those real subtle connections. Like, don't bother with the first retrospective because it's just setting the scene. Use the second one instead. So that's the idea. My big insight for everything that has happened this week is I look back on it now, and that was scarily productive and scarily efficient in terms of my time. And the production of that article was literally like a wow moment. I did not expect to see 0 in the Grammarly AI checker. I didn't. But it just shows that when you start thinking about AI in a way where you go, how can this thing free up my time to do the things that I'm good at? That is where the value is. I'm very good at sketching out the purpose and how the inputs and the outputs should work on a microservice. I don't want to be programming the things. I can, but what a waste of time. And the same thing with the content. 23 years of experience, what works and what doesn't to a degree. You certainly know what doesn't work. And putting AI through that filter and putting those observations in, I don't think any amount of prompting would have created that article without that input. That's human in the loop all the way. So thank you for watching. Exciting times. Looking forward to next week. And it's going to be great. And yeah, thanks for subscribing, commenting, and all of those things. Really appreciate it.